Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to everybody that's joining the session this morning. Hope you enjoyed the plenary. This session is titled How to Use Operations Dashboard for Stakeholders Analysis. And we have Angelia Hagopian from Onslow County. She's a GIS specialist for Onslow County and has been helping public safety and local communities by understanding and visualizing mapping data for 15 years. So I will turn it over to you, Angelia. Before you get started, for all those that are on the session, if you would, be sure to open your chat in the attendee hub window and go ahead and shoot those questions and I'll moderate those and we'll do some Q&A towards the end. So again, thanks for joining and it's all yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Like he said, I'm Angelia Hagopian and I work for Onslow County as a GIS specialist. So I have been creating dashboards for almost 4 years now, and I wanted to put together a presentation on tips, considerations, and things that you should really think about when using it for stakeholder analysis. On my opening page, you'll see here, this is a dashboard that I created for our planning department for fire inspections. And the question that they needed answered there was, what is the volume of inspections? Where are they at? And what's coming down the pipeline scheduling wise? And I will try to point out all of my little screenshots with various examples as we go along. Okay, today's agenda is what is a dashboard? Because I want to make this for everybody. Dashboard components, creating a dashboard, and tips. And in there is a dashboard I created for the Sheriff's Department. And the question on that one was DMV incidents with alcohol or drugs, with some filtering and a couple of pie charts and serial charts. Okay, there's me. I really should update that bio because now I'm working on 17 years experience. So I love telling maps, I love telling stories, and I just love GIS. I really do love what I do. Okay, what is an operations dashboard? Basically, it is a one-stop shop, centralized location for visualizing data. And it can have a map element, it cannot have a map element, it has charts and basically metrics and key indicators on your data. So basically, when I create a dashboard, my goal is, what am I creating it for? Who are my stakeholders and what questions am I answering? All right, doesn't that sound cool? I think so. Okay, operations dashboards components, there's only two. You need an AGOL account and you need data. The only account that can't create a dashboard is a viewer account. All the rest of the accounts can create dashboards. And your data, it can be a map service, it can be tabular, as long as you can get it into the AGOL account, and that means ArcGIS Online. You can put it in the dashboard. Okay, the data components. So really what you need to do is prep your data before you get it in. A lot of people think they can just jump right in, and you can, but then you might find yourself going back to play with the data. So first you have to find your data. Everything's pretty much under the content folder. You need to share your data. This is super important. I always forget this one. You have to share your data, otherwise nobody else can look at it. You need to be very familiar with your data. So you really need to look at the attribute table. And then the fourth one is really a tip, and that is creating a view layer of your data. And this is really meant to kind of secure the data, lock it down, and that way, as you're messing with their data or messing with the schema, you're not wrecking your dashboard. Okay, so the first one, finding your data. Again, it's pretty much going to always all be under content. If you're working with Survey 123 data, I threw this in because a lot of people don't realize that survey data is stored under the survey creator's account in a folder that says survey and then the name of the survey. And if you didn't create it, you're not going to see it, and you really need to ask the creator to share a view of it with you. So just wanted to throw that in about the Survey 123 because a lot of people don't realize that. My data is missing, what do I do? Don't panic, it probably means it's not in there. So I've done a different presentation that kind of goes into the weeds a little bit on adding data. You can use a map service, REST API. You can use it from your computer. Lots of ways to get data in. So here's a little screenshot with some numbers here that tells you how to add the data. You just Basically, you're adding the item. If it's a shape file, make sure you zip it. All right, and you can have tabular data. You can have a CSV file. You can have spreadsheets, that sort of thing. And you can upload them and then access them. Don't forget to share it. Okay, here, super simple. You are going to select the layer. You are going to click on share, and then you're going to select your share level. Now you may think, why not make it shareable for everyone public-wise? You might be creating a dashboard for a particular group, and you don't want it shared with the whole organization. You might be creating a dashboard that's maybe only for supervisors. I've done that. You may be creating a dashboard that only certain people are supposed to have eyes on that data. So you need to really create your choose that share level that's appropriate for your data. Now, down here, I highlighted that you can actually do group sharing. A lot of people don't realize you can actually lock down your dashboards to groups. And the group sharing is only those members of the groups can access it. One of the use cases today is going to be a child abuse survey, and that is locked down to a TASCO group. And only members of the TASCO group can see it. They need a username and password to access the data due to the sensitivity. All right, and then basically once you click edit group sharing, so you can make yourself the owner, then choose a group. You don't have to share it within your organization. You can just do yourself and a group. And then over here, you just choose the appropriate group. All right, you really need to know your data. You probably hear this all the time in GIS, even more important when creating a dashboard. And to do that, you're gonna click on the title of the layer, and then you're gonna click on data, and then click on fields. This tells you how the AGOL is interpreting the fields of your data, especially if you've done a CSV file, a spreadsheet. I mean, if it's a shape file or if you're bringing it in through a REST API, you're pretty much gonna, those are gonna be set by the service. But when it's tabular, you really need to know how that data is, such as if you have a field with dates, just text, the environment's not smart enough to know that if you have 7-5-2020, it's not going to know that that's a date field unless it's been formatted to be a date field. It's just not that smart. So if you want to be able to parse your data out or have any charts that use dates, you need to make sure that that date field is a date field. If you want to add something up like home values, it really needs to be an integer field, so you can add those prices. So you really need to know your data, so that way you know if you need to create additional fields and do some field calculating. All right. So the AGOL component's pretty easy. You're going to sign in, click on the apps waffle, and then you're going to click dashboards, and then create dashboard. Pretty simple. If you don't see create dashboard, it means you're in a viewer level, and go to your admin and ask for a higher level of account. Okay, on to the good stuff. This is a survey. This is a dashboard of a survey I created that we'll be using for our first use case today, which is for a community survey to be released to the public. It's not quite released yet, so all the data you see is fake, but just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. Okay, so when you're creating dashboards, you really need to think about the stakeholders of the dashboard. Who are you creating it for? What question are you trying to answer? Why is this dashboard being used? What is it needed for? You really need to think about that, because that's going to really drive the focus of your dashboard. And a lot of people skip this step, and then you find you go back and redesign and waste a lot of time. So the first one, child abuse community survey. The stakeholders of this are all the agencies on this task force. And for this particular, it's the TASCO task force. For this particular one, we've got cities, we've got churches, we've got pretty much, we got the police, the sheriff. It's really an amazing task force, and everybody is involved in it. I'm always surprised. I think there's like 100 stakeholders. So what they wanted was they wanted a survey where you push out, do you know about child abuse in your community? Have you never reported it? Would you attend a child abuse educational event? That sort of thing. So it's a survey, but it has no map element to it. They wanted to keep it anonymous. And so I chose this as a use case today because it's a really good example of creating a dashboard without a map, but it's using survey 123 data. And one of the things that they wanted to do was not only see how many surveys have been submitted, but if they go do a community event, and then they submit the survey at the end of the event. How many people have submitted the survey? What kind of responses are they getting from that education event? So, and then they can take that data and use it for reporting back on grants and other monies that they have received for the task force. Okay, so with that in mind, creating a dashboard, when you create a dashboard, you have to give it a title and tags. I always recommend giving it at least one tag. Little note in here, you won't see the tag when you enter it, it just kind of takes it. All right, then you just create dashboard, pretty simple. All dashboards start as a blank slate. Don't panic, it's meant to be blank. All right, you basically are going to be adding your elements. There we go. And then as you add your elements, you're going to be selecting your data layer. So the elements I chose for today's presentation are the ones that I feel are the most powerful. You can go, I could do 2-3 hour presentation on dashboards, but they gave me 20 minutes. So we're going to choose the ones that have the biggest bang for your buck, your time. All right, so the first one is an indicator element. I used to think this was the weakest element, and it turns out it's one of the strongest ones. And I just wanted to highlight some of those features. You can filter your data or not. And when you create a filter, you can create like an equal or what I call wildcard query. If you're using survey data, I highly recommend using the word contains if you have a field where there could be multiple answers, such as which types of abuse do you feel are a problem in our community? There was 5 choices. So I have 5 different unique elements or 5 unique values in that field in order to filter it out the way they wanted to, such as physical abuse. They wanted to know how many people thought physical abuse was a problem. I had to do contains physical. Another thing you can do is conditional formatting. What about knowing if there was, how many new surveys came in that week? How many things came in the last 24 hours? All the surveys have a timestamp in them. But any of your data that has timestamp, it could be crime. It's like, you know, if they had a physical assault kind of crime and you want to know all the part 1 crimes that came in within the last week, within the last month, you can create a conditional formatting indicator that tells you if the threshold's been met, which is at least 1, or if it hasn't been met, and then it shows you some different responses. So this one was how many new surveys were submitted this week versus no new surveys submitted. All right, pie charts. These are ones where I love pie charts, but if you're not careful, you can make a hot mess real fast with a pie chart. You need to choose a field with a limited number of unique defined values. You don't want to use a free text field, and you don't want to use a field where it has multiple answers, where, like the one where choose all of the types of abuse in our community, where there's 5 answers. And I showed an example of what that looks like. You need it to be like a yes, no, really it should be less than 8 values so that it's not so hard on the eyeball, so you can still get that data. Serial charts. So with serial charts, I love these. You need to know what field you're going to group by, and you cannot do multiple fields grouping them together. I recently made a dashboard where it was names, and I thought I could combine first, middle, and last name and group by that. No, you could not do that. So it was kind of a learning moment for me that I should have had my name in one field because that's how I wanted to group it. And so that you need to keep that in mind. If you want to group your data, it better be already ready to go. And arcade expressions in operations dashboard at this time aren't allowed. I know the beta version does. But I also recommend filtering out your null values, otherwise it will show. Where's the map? You don't have to have one. However, if you do want to have one, add it first. So this is the final dashboard. Has no map, as you can see. This is something where this hasn't been released to the public yet. It's fake data, but once we do, the stakeholders will be able to access this using a username and password, and they'll be able to, without me having to do anything, if they go out and do a community event, they can come back, see what the results are, and see whether or not the task force, what kind of effect it's having on the community. So, all right. Okay, next use case. This one is a residential development dashboard. And for this one, the question was, you know, how much residential development do we have in Onslow County? And on the left over here, these are current building permits. And on the right over here is certificates of occupancy where people can move in. And it tracks them as far back as the system goes. So they're able to see back as, I think they got it in the InterGov system, I think at end of 2016, so that's why you see a real tiny amount. And then from there, they've got full years of data. And the focus for this dashboard was to be able to give that information of what's currently being developed and what has been developed. What, that way developers, county managers, school districts, they can see how fast people are building homes in Onslow County. Okay, so with this one, I'm going to touch on the map element. So for this one, you got to create a map. And we don't have Portal at work, so I create everything in ArcGIS Online. So you create a map first, and then don't forget to save your map, okay? And then, of course, don't forget to share it, because that's my big one. I always forget to share it, and then I ask everybody to test my stuff out, and then they say, oh, I can't see anything, and then it's because I forgot to share it. Okay, so when you add an map element, it's going to have settings that you can set. Scale bar, it basically dictates what they can and can't do inside the map itself. Do you want a legend? Do you want them to be able to change the base map? That sort of thing, zoom in, zoom out. All right, so you can give them no settings, or you can give them lots of settings. So with the dashboard base map, you can actually set it up so that the dashboard elements such as indicators, pie charts, change as the user interacts with the map. So say they want to zoom into a town, then it can update the indicators, update the pie charts, update everything on there as they're moving around the map. So, and reversely, you can also set it so that as they're interacting with a pie chart, or if there's any filter options on there, it can update the base map or zoom to that area or flash or anything like that. So you can have it set up so that very interactive, very easy as the user uses the dashboard, it updates and plays around with it. So for this one, we kept it pretty simple. Unfortunately, I was hoping to be able to do something live for you guys today, but with a 15-second delay, that ain't happening. So this is what the final product is. And with this map element, if you were to zoom into Richlands, it would update all the numbers here everywhere to the Richlands area. I do have it enabled that they can turn off the building permits and just see what's already been developed. You can click on any of these columns or charts or pie charts, and it updates that map and gives them that information. So if a developer was looking to see what's going on in Stump Sound, they can zoom right in and find that information. All right, I have a minute left, so I'm going to quick do my tips. If you're using survey data that has no map, and this was a big one for me to figure out, and nowhere in Esri's documentation could I find it, you still have to add the survey point as if you had a map. So you're still going to go into select a sublayer from Tasco survey, and you're going to still select that survey point, even though there's no point data because it's all anonymous. There's no map. I'm not capturing any of that information. You still have to add it because that is where your table is of data. So I just wanted to let people know that may have found that to be a stumbling block, because it was a stumbling block for me. And then really play around with the elements. Try displaying the same field of data a lot of different ways. You'd be surprised at how if you use a gauge versus a pie chart versus a serial chart, how the data changes and how you can convey it in different ways that you maybe even seeing a pattern you didn't see before. Okay, that concludes the presentation. Thanks for attending. This is my contact information. So if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to me, feel free to take this as a screenshot. I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation, and I kept it right to 20 minutes. I'm really, really excited about that.
Well, great job, and thanks for that. I know that's a hot topic over the last year or so, and especially with Esri's continued development with beta and beta 2. There's ever going to be more and more people wanting to do that. So we do have a couple questions that came in. We're going to throw your way. If you're sharing data or dashboard content with only certain people, do each of those people have to have a paid ArcGIS license or be part of the ArcGIS Online organizational account, or can they access it with a free AGOL account?
If you're locking it down to specific groups, such as, you know, I showed that screen with the, like I have, for instance, a Tasco group, and I only have certain members in there. You can, if you're trying to add people outside your organization, it gets a little trickier. You can do it. It is a little bit easier to do it inside your organization to add those group members, but you should be able to add them if they're inside the AGOL world.
Gotcha. Another one's coming in. Have you worked at all with Esri's new beta version? And if so, what differences are you noticing that are the most powerful or useful?
I have worked with the beta version. I haven't done it yet for public distribution, only because since it is a beta, when I was reading up on the FAQs, it said performance was unstable. So when you're creating a dashboard for public consumption, you don't like the words, you don't want unstable. The thing that the beta version has, which is really powerful, is it can use arcade expressions. So I've been playing around with that quite a bit. What I have found though is that if you use an arcade expression inside a pop-up or to create some field calculations, that does not carry over into the dashboard. You have to do the arcade expressions inside that dashboard. And so for instance, I have a map and I have a lot of pop-ups and I'm doing field calculating on those pop-ups. I cannot see those field calculations or any of those arcade expressions inside the dashboard. So right now I am playing with the beta and I'm super excited about the arcade expressions, but it wasn't exactly how I envisioned it. And it still didn't solve my group by values. You cannot concatenate multiple fields using arcade expressions in beta. Made me very sad.
If date data comes in as a text field, is that changed in ArcGIS Online or at the data source?
Nope, you have to change that at the data source. So that's where you go into your, if you're, like say you have a spreadsheet or a CSV file that you upload, or even say a shapefile, and then it become a hosted feature layer, you will need to go into the field view, that data field view, and then you can add a field, and then you can do field calculating and say, I want to add a field, I want to make it a date, and then I want to field calculate off that text date field. And then you can bring it in and then use it. But yeah, the system is not that smart. It's not going to see it and interpret it.
Right. So you could either go back and reformat the schema on your source data and re-upload that back into AGOL, or you could do the add a field calculation within AGOL itself to get.
Yep. I have done both. It depends. Like if if my data is coming from our SDE and I'm publishing it as a map service, I have to go back to the data source and fix it because it's a map service. I can't do that inside AGOL. I have to go back to the data source. But if it's a shapefile I've uploaded that I'm using, then I will do it right inside the AGOL environment just by adding a field and then field calculating.
Gotcha. And we got a couple more questions here, if you don't mind. If we have an existing map in ArcGIS Online, can we add it to a dashboard?
Absolutely. That's actually usually how I start. Is I got an existing map, and then I'm going in and playing with my data, formatting my data, and then I bring it into the dashboard. The only thing to keep in mind, if you have a map that you're using for multiple purposes, say you're doing it for a dashboard, say you also have it in a web mapping application, keep in mind if you mess with your map, it reflects in all of those areas. So if you've created a web mapping application and you have your base map formatted a particular way for pop-ups and whatnot, and then you say you suppress a field because you don't want that to be viewable in the web mapping application's attribute table, well, now you've just suppressed it in your dashboard, and maybe you're using it as an indicator. So you just need to keep that in mind, because I've done that where I one base map, 3 applications in a dashboard, and then I forget that I suppressed something to make it easier, and then it broke something in my dashboard.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more. Can you include attachments based upon a location on the map, for example, a site plan?
You can if it's formatted correctly inside the map, or if you did a list element, you might be able to do some HTML programming there where you're pulling in that URL of the site plan. So then you could have that as a hyperlink, because you can do a list element, and then where it's listing like maybe a business name and a location and then a site plan. If you have it already in a field as a URL, you can bring that into the list element and make that a hyperlink. If you wanted to do it that way, or you could have it formatted inside the pop-up, and the pop-ups do work in the map element. So when you bring those maps in, the pop-ups will still work, which is awesome. And then you can have that as like a hyperlink and click on it, and then it opens up.
Great. Well, you can't see the chat for all the people that are on this session. She can't actually see the stream chat coming through, but Angelia, I can tell you there are numerous ones giving you great jobs and thumbs up. There are a couple people that want to follow up and speak about particular things that you demoed. So for those attendees, I would suggest that you do either screenshot her or grab her contact info there to follow up with her. And just as one last reminder before we let you go, that all the sessions at the conference this week will be recorded and will be on our YouTube channel. I know that popped up in the chat early on, but just wanted to re-emphasize that no need to worry about taking notes or any of that sort of stuff. We anticipate those being on the YouTube channel shortly after the conclusion of the conference. So with that, I'd like to thank you again for attending. Thank you again for presenting. It was very informative. And enjoy your next session at 10:30.
Okay. Bye, everyone.